So thanks everyone for joining another cmBuilder workshop. Right, today our theme is White Lotus, whatever that is. So for people that watched it, like refer to the characters over here in the background. Right, these people that I don't know what they are. Okay, so our theme for today is to talk about how to enhance your presentation, right? So we get some customers, sometimes we're going to specific calls with customers and we see their presentations and we always notice things that can be enhanced here and there. So like I collected a couple of things, not a couple, like a bunch of things that you guys can do and like use that as a checklist for every time that you provide creating a presentation, that you can go through that to see what are the things that you can do to make sure that your output is pretty interesting. Okay. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about a presentation timeline, like it's a new feature that we have developed and it's on beta testing right now. I'm going to show you how it works. And to that, we have a guest speaker today. Let's see if he's going to show up at some point over here to talk about how to clean up drone imagery using GIMP. Is a free software. And then we're going to talk about other smaller updates that are in the platform already. Okay. So as usual, the recording of the session will be available in 24 hours, so you can check all the previous workshops on YouTube. And just a reminder that we have workshops like this every month, usually in the last Thursday of the month. So keep an eye for new invites for the email, but also on the banner on the app for you to sign up for the next workshops. Even if you can't come, just sign up for it because you're gonna get a link of the recording later for the email. Okay. And you can use the QA and the chat for questions. I have my team over here that will help me as I go. Okay, so let's talk about how to enhance your presentation. So I'm gonna go through a couple of like different stages of the process over here and collecting actions that we can do to enhance the presentation and make sure that you get the best output, right? I'm not gonna go into details in these items because there are a lot of them. So I'm just like this session today, this first part of the session is just to give you like an overview and like an overall idea of the actions that you can take. And we have other workshops that goes deeper into each one of these items. Okay. So the first part is the idea of improving your site surroundings, right? So how can we do that, right? So when you create a scenario in cmBuilder, the default state of the scenario will look something like this, right? You get a default satellite image that is placed on your map. The shape of the terrain is also coming from a satellite scan, and these white buildings will show up as like an initial state of the representation of the surrounding buildings, right? So how do we get from this point to something like this, where we get like better satellite images on the background, more updated, with also the 3D shapes of these buildings, right? So the first thing to do is to import a Google 3D map or a drone scan of the area, right? So we have a specific video and workshops for that, that we explain how to do that in process, like the whole process. But the idea is that you will import a new model coming from either a Google 3D Maps. It's a process that we go through Blender to create those, this type of 3D model. And Nikan, if you can put the link on the support for the user guide page on the chat, would be great for the people to refer to it. So the idea is that you're gonna import a 3D model to replace these white buildings. So these white buildings in the tree structure, we're gonna see them inside the surrounding massing. And the idea is that you're gonna bring something else like these buildings to make sure that you get the best representation of your surroundings. And we need to do this today within the Blender process, but an update that's coming in 2 months, I believe, will allow you to do this directly from the platform. This is going to be a huge update that we are working on right now. The idea of integrating cmBuilder directly with Google 3D Maps, and you will be able to do this inside the platform. Okay, so that's the main purpose of this step, is to improve your map your surroundings with the Google 3D Maps. If you have a drone scan, you can also import that. And of course, with a drone scan, you're gonna get a better um, resolution of the buildings and more updated references, right? So as you can see over here, if I zoom in this drone scan, I can see things in a lot of details, like the car shapes and like even the building shapes, or like the mechanical units over here at the rooftop. So depending on the work that you're doing, bringing in a drone scan, if you have them available, it's super interesting. It will really enhance that kind of like idea of your surroundings. Okay, so keep that in mind. And again, we have instructions on that, how to do that on our user guide. Cool. So the next step of this process will be to update the aerial images. When you create the site in cmBuilder, by default, the aerial images that you see over here in the bottom, like on projected on the map, these aerial images and these white buildings, actually the whole context comes from a service called Mapbox, right? So we don't have control on the quality of these images that are provided. It's a third-party service that is integrated with cmBuilder, but we do have the ability for you to improve them, right? So what happens is that, for example, this image is quite outdated. It shows buildings over here that have been demolished already and things like that. So the idea is that you can bring in satellite images coming from another aerial service like Google Earth or Google Maps, either Bing Maps if you want to, that will be more updated to this area. And also you can bring in your drone orthomosaic image, right? So as you can see, a drone orthomosaic image is a flat image of that area. And if you bring it to cmBuilder, it's the best process for you to get a better resolution for this background, right? Because the images coming from Google Maps might not be super high resolution and might not be as updated as your drone image, right? A drone image will always be more updated than the satellite image. So as you can see over here, even bringing in a new satellite image, it can be a little bit blurry depending on the area that you're selecting. But if you bring in a drone imagery, like it will make sure that you get a better resolution for this background. This is good because you can use that to quickly refer like sidewalks and lighting poles, overhead power lines, and all of these elements with more accuracy from a high resolution image. Okay. Third, on the same idea of enhancing the site context is the idea of improving the terrain shape. So we do have a custom terrain tool here where you can improve the terrain shape using a 3D model or using points, right? So again, I'm not going to explain in too much detail how to use this tool. There's a specific video for that. But the idea is that it will give you the ability to set up what is going to be the start point of your terrain. So at the moment, cmBuilder can only have one custom terrain. We are going to change that very soon. We are going to be able to create like an existing terrain and a proposed terrain. You're going to be able to import those. But at the moment, you can only have one custom terrain. And cmBuilder, when you start the project, you will have a default terrain for this area, right? So the default terrain might not be as accurate as your survey data. You might have like a drawing with contour lines, or you might have a surface coming from Revit or from Civil 3D, several other kind of like data sets that you can import to cmBuilder to create a better terrain. So right now, this is Chicago, so like it's very flat. There's not much reason for us to improve the terrain. But if I go here, like in another scenario where we can see some sort of sloping and we want to get these slopes correctly done, we can create a new terrain by creating points, right? So I can put points on these areas to represent what are the elevation of the terrain, or I can create this from a model that is imported, right? So this will give you a better representation of your topography for more accurate planning, and also a when you do your excavation takeoff, your excavation takeoff will have like more accurate numbers. Cool. So these are the three things that you can do to enhance your site context. And then on top of that, you can use our resource library to improve the initial conditions. So things like power lines, vegetation, traffic lines, signage, fire hydrants, and other city elements, you're going to find these elements all in our library of resources. So if you're starting your plan over here, let's bring back those 3D shapes for the surroundings. So let's say, for example, that I imported this model for the surroundings, but this model is not showing where my power lines are, where my vegetation is, and like a bunch of like things that I know that is there on the site. It might be relevant for my planning. So if that is not captured on your drone scan, or if that's not captured in your models coming from Google, you can create these from our library. So for example, let's say I'm seeing over here that there is an overhead power line at some point. So if I want to create this from the library, I can go here in resources, and inside the category here, you can go into site conditions, and you're gonna find like a bunch of like things that are more relevant for this stage of like recreating what is the existing condition over there. So like for example, if I close over here, if I go over here in electrical, I can put in like a power line where like I can draw this as a line, but like drawing this as a line won't allow me to define exactly where each pulse is. So like I prefer to put this as a point. So I can go over here and say, I know that there's a 3D shape over there that is this power line. So I can go in and rotate it to align with the others, and then go back and then adjust my shape to like put this power line exactly at the height that I want, and with the length of this of the cables that I want. I can even like adjust the angle of the cables and things like that. So this will give you a lot of capabilities for you to adjust things properly and have like a good context for the surrounding area. Okay, so now that I place this power line over here, I can copy paste it and then place it another one inside the same area. Okay, and then this, you can spend like a couple minutes just redoing this shape and like representing the items that will really impact your planning, to make sure that you get them all correctly done over there, because this will impact, like for example, crane access, other vehicle accesses, and so forth. Okay, so other things that you can do: power lines, vegetation, traffic lines. So if I go over here to a completed scenario, we can see that like there is like traffic lights, lighting posts, fences. For some reason, the fire hydrant is on the ground, so let's bring it up. Signage, bollards, all of that. So this improves the context of your planning. And the last thing about improving site surroundings will be the ability. Did everyone crash? Hello. Oh, sorry. I think that there was like a little freezing here on my internet. Can everybody see me?
You're back.
I'm back. Okay, cool. So as you can see, I have like some traffic animation over here representing these kind of like cars coming in and out, buses and all of that. I have Justin's car over here. He personally asked me to add his car to the presentation. So that is it. And this kind of like enhances that idea of like, what is the impact that my construction will have on this site? So if I go into this other view where I can see the actual in and out of vehicles on my site, I can see, for example, like how this truck is gonna be integrated with the rest of the traffic and so on and so forth, right? So this gives you also like that little flair to the presentation. Okay, so these are the couple of like the main things that you can do to improve that initial context of your site. Now moving on to another step, like on enhancing the presentation. So how can we improve the usage of resources, right? So first of all, adding animations to resources like cranes, excavators, and delivery trucks, we really give also that that better understanding of how these equipment will be working on the site. For example, I created an animation for like this truck over here that will show me like a little bit of like the street swept path, like access points. Can that truck make the turn or not, right? So this improves that understanding of the site traffic, things that are happening inside of your fence line, and also animations for excavators to kind of like bring the project to life, right? To understand how these objects will work in real life and so on and so forth. You can apply these. The two main animations types that we have is the animation of an object following a path like this one, and an animation of the resources parameters changing over time. So as you can see over here, this resource has an animation that shows how the bucket should be rotating, the boom rotations, and so on during a period of time, right? So there's a specific video for that online that I really focus on just showing how to create all the these main animations on the site. And one of the great things that we plan to do still this year is to build a whole new interface for the animation. So right now, the animation in cmBuilder is controlled by this visual programming interface that you can create your code over here on how the object should be animated, but we plan to take this outside of that visual programming interface and put it over here in the bottom with like some easier controls for you to define your animations. Okay. Second, on the idea of improving resources is to explore the branding tool. So the branding tool is available for premium and enterprise subscriptions only, right? So for you guys that have access to this, you can explore the usage of that branding to like put the name of your company in fence lines, on gates, on like on offices, on the trucks, and all of that. So every resource can have like your branding showing. So you can go over here and define that you want to show your logo. So you have your brand construction showing over there. And if you click on this, you're gonna have like other options of branding that are defined on the company level, right? So explore this to kind of like add more information and more of that visual identity into your simulations if you have the branding option. Okay, so this is a good idea. And other things like use illustrative resources. So this is kind of like an idea of like sometimes you might miss a couple of like resources that we have in our library that can really bring like make your simulation pop. So for example, markers to highlight elements. I like this one because it's a kind of like a 3D highlighter of like what these elements are. So like this is a toilet, this is a site office, this is where you're gonna like find your first aid, right? Where my camera is located, where my muster point is located. So we have here in our library of resources, if you go into safety and personnel and look for markers, you're going to find like a bunch of different markers that you can place all around your site. And this can bring also the attention to the viewer of like where these things are, right? And what a good thing about this is that when you go into 2D view, it gives you like a quick legend of like these elements on your site as well. But I'm going to talk about this in a minute. Cool. Another thing that for illustrative resources like deep repiles for demolition, these are just examples, right? There are many other resources that in our library that you can use to kind of like make your site pop. So debris piles for demolition, dirt piles for excavation, right? So if I go over here in this excavation process, let me go to the first milestone. So the first milestone of excavation, I created a dirt pile over here, and I created this dirt pile as, let me do it from scratch. So I will delete this one, and I will go over here, resources, go back all. dirt pile. So instead of putting this dirt pile as a point, which sometimes I see a lot of people doing, putting several of these as a point, you can create this as a polyline, and you can just like make a random placement of these elements just to show that like your dirt piles will be over there, and this will create like a pattern of repetition of that dirt pile all over that polyline that I just drew. And the advantage of another advantage of doing this as a polyline is that you can make this polyline follow the terrain. So now, because I created the dirt pile over there, as I go forward with my excavation, because it's connected to the terrain, if my excavation goes down, the dirt pile follows along with it, right? So it gives me like an idea of where I'm placing the dirt as I remove them from the site. And the moment that I don't need it anymore, like the next milestone, I don't need this guy, so I can just right click and at this milestone, and then when I go to the next one, that third pile is gone, right? So this gives like the viewer an understanding where how you're moving all the dirt on your excavation. Cool. Same thing with a debris, right? So if you're creating a simulation for demolition, you can go here and you can just search for debris, and then there will be like a couple of debris piles that you can use in the same manner that I did with the dirt pile. Okay. And lastly, about resources, is the idea of like using the icon mode. So icon mode allows you to replace how an object is viewed once the icon mode is turned on, right? So the icon view, it's applied automatically when you go to 2D. But let's take a look at this fence line here, for example. So this fence, when I click on icon view, I will be able to define what how I want this object to look like when once I enabled the icon view. So if I turn this on, you see that that resource is going to be replaced by a line on the ground. But on 3D, this might not be super useful. But when you go on to 2D, like that's where you're gonna start seeing your site look like almost like a drawing, because that icon view can be applied to linear resources like my fence over here, but also to point-based resources. So this fire hydrant, if I deactivate the icon view for this guy and I go into 2D, you can barely see that if you look from afar, right? So if I go in the 500, turn on the icon view, it will be replaced by a little icon over there. That it's way easier for me to visualize that on 2D. And I like to have some slides on the presentation that would show this a 2D view of the site, especially in the beginning, like when you're defining your site simulation. Oh, sorry, your site mobilization, right? Adding a slide that is a 2D view, it gives like the viewer a pretty good understanding how you're placing elements all around. Okay. So yeah, use and abuse the icon mode to create that two plan view. Okay, 2D plan view. Another thing that really makes a big difference on the visual aspect of your simulation is to leverage our texture library. So this is available only for premium and enterprise users, but let me explain a little bit what we mean by this. So in cmBuilder, you can change the texture of like elements that are applied to the ground, like these asphalt street over here, the sidewalks, and like these hazard area with our texture library, right? So you draw something on the ground and then a zone, and then you can go in here and apply a texture to define what is going to be the material applied to that area, right? So as you can see, this whole area over here has been enhanced with the drawing of like a bunch of texture zones that represents those objects with like a better material, right? So we have the sidewalk, we have like the roads over here, and so on and so forth. So when you compare it to this, like with a drone imagery, it does make a lot of sense for you to just keep the drone imagery if you want to. But whenever you don't have a drone imagery, it's a little bit harder for you to represent exactly where the sidewalks are, or like what are the lines of the streets and so on, depending on the quality of the satellite image. So when you use textures to represent these the roads, the streets, and like sidewalks, and like even dirt for the area that you just cleaned, right? So if I go back over here in this site, as you can see, there is a moment where I'm gonna clean this ground over here and remove like this concrete and so on. And the easiest way to show that is just applying a zone with a texture over there to say, hey, this has been scrapped out, right? So you can use the dirt texture to represent excavation steps, which soon will be the default. We will change the excavation colors to have textures to them. And you can use dirt to show rough grading, site cleaning, water textures to represent rivers or retention basins or something like that. Like, for example, this one over here, asphalt for parking lots and streets, gravel for temporary roads. So like an example of that would be this stage where we put in some dirt over there and then gravel on the sides over here as a temporary access point and so on, right? Concrete and grass for sidewalks and landscape. And a bonus tip would be to use lines to define parking spots and curbs, right? So if I go back here on this scenario, you see that I use lines over here to create parking spots, right? And the easiest way to do that, and let me do it here on this view. So let's say that I want to represent this parking lot over here. The easiest way to do that is to go into the annotation function, create a zone, and then I'm gonna do a zone for this area. And after the zone is created, I will apply my asphalt texture to it. So here in texture, I'm going to change it to asphalt. And to show the parking spots and like all of that, I can go over here in the annotate function, create a line, and you don't need to create a line for every single parking spot. The line function is the only function today that you can have more than one line in the same sketch. So if I create just one line like this, I can click on offset, click on keep original line, and then you just need to go ahead and define what is going to be the width of each one of these. And if you use the shortcut over there, O, it's even easier because you can click O several times and then you just go in and do your offset, right? I know that I'm putting these with a big width, but it's just as a representation. Okay, so when I hit confirm here, of course, those colors are a little bit weird, so I can change the colors to white and represent my parking spot with the correct thickness for those lines and so on. And if you want to go even further, you can add the sketch and add more lines to it, or you can create like a line like this to go ahead and do the whole shenanigan. Whoops. Let me just redo that part. Cool. So that way, it will allow you to create like your parking spots easier. Of course, I could do this for the whole area over here, but if I want to place a curb around this parking lot, the easiest way to do that is to go over here in annotation, create a line, and then instead of drawing the same shape of my zone, I'm going to click on project, click on the zone, and it will take the same sketch as my zone. You project that on the ground, and then I can change the color of this line to represent what is going to be my curve color. So I'll put like a grayish color over here. There you go. Now I have like a parking lot with a curve, right? So this really makes the elements in the view pop, right? Because the satellite, even if you have like a super high quality satellite picture on the background, sometimes that there's too much detail in there and it can like uh, it can be in the way for people to understand exactly where you're placing your elements. Okay. Going forward over here, we have the ability to adjust the scenario settings. So this is something that Javi is super passionate about, right? So the idea of like playing with your scenario settings to adjust the quality of your screen, your view. So for example, if I go in this scenario here and I go into the last milestone where I see a bunch of things going on over there, you see the reflections on the windows, right? Showing a little bit of the surroundings and also some other colors over here on the 3D model. These are all defined on our scenario settings, so you can play around with the reflections on windows, turn them on, so all the elements that have some transparency to it will have a reflection applied to it, and the environmental lighting will change the way that the light is casted on your parts or like on your scenario. So you can play around with some of these options to see which type of color like represents better on this environment, right? So you can play around with the backdrop. Like, to be honest, like this default sky is a really good aspect of it already. But in the next workshop, I'm gonna see if I can show you guys how to import 3D images for the surroundings to give it even a better kind of like view for the whole area. And also you can explore the graphics over here. So the graphics, there's a default settings for these graphics. A bunch of these things will be turned on already, but you can play around with like the ambient occlusion to make like the shadows be a little bit more evident in the corners of your screen. You can also, I usually suggest you use the anti-aliasing. I don't know how to say this word, aliasing, anti this, you know, where you can go ahead and improve that to 8x, because this will improve the quality of the edges of your buildings and so on, especially when you're exporting the images. Okay. So just make sure to review these before you present this, right? So you don't need to do this right in the beginning. I suggest you do the work without like worrying too much about this. When you're about to present this to someone, just go there on the settings and explore this, because then you're going to see everything already applied into the context of your simulation. Okay. Okay, so all of that can be adjusted on the scenario settings. Now, the idea of enhancing the presentation itself, like at the end, once you're done with all your simulation aspects, you added all the objects that you wanted, what can you do to make sure that like the final output is gonna have like some beautification applied to it, right? So the first one is the ability is to create a landscape stage in the end. If you have like some sort of reference of how your landscape is supposed to look like, you can use our zones and our textures and elements from our library to create a landscape kind of like the view of the area. So applying grass, applying like planters and trees and some gravel stuff, like some hedges over here, and so on and so forth. So all of these elements will make the final view, the final milestone really pop, because instead of like having a barren background over there, you actually bring things to life, and this really sells the simulation. Okay. So explore the vegetation library that we have, the resources and the textures as well to create that. And another very important thing is that applying the presentation visuals to the parts of your model. So color highlight and the growth and shrink animation will really make your simulation pop. So for example, if I go here in this presentation, let me open go into a slide that shows that animation that I'm talking about. So I can click on this slide and then play it from the current slide, right? So when I hit play here, like all the parts of my model that are there are new construction are supposed to show highlighted in green, right? And also we'll have some sort of animation, like a slidey animation, like a growth animation, that's what we call. And you can also apply the same idea for a shrinking animation for demolition and so on and so forth. So this will help the viewer understand what is the path, like the direction of your concrete pours and so on and so forth. But also the green highlight brings the attention to what are the items that are connected to this milestone. Sometimes like a new element will show up in your screen, and you will not notice what is a new element compared to the previous slide. So having these highlighted in green will really make your simulation pop. Okay. So to do that, you
Hey
can
Joe,
go. Yep.
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to make it green as well. I personally preference, like, especially concrete. You can make the concrete just stay the gray color or a different
Hmm.
gray color if you want. It doesn't have to flash the green part as well. Just to
Yep.
reiterate that.
So to apply these presentations, you need to apply them to the parts, not to the whole model. So if you select, for example, over here, the structural model, and I'm going to edit to apply these visuals, I need to edit the beam elements, not the beam model. Okay. So when I select the whole model and I go into edit beam elements, whatever I do right now will apply individually to each one of the parts. So like I'm selecting 1,000 parts over here. And if I go into presentation and visuals, I will see that I have multiple types of presentations applied to these objects. But let's select one group of parts over here. So for example, these walls, they have a highlight color to green, and also the direction of their growth on that kind of like animation, and how it is applied to the whole model instead of like in each individual part. Okay, so check the previous workshop video related to this, because it will really help you kind of like highlight those elements in the view. Okay. And lastly, on some presentation recording tips, right? So one thing that I really like to do in every presentation is to create a 360 camera rotation for the last slide. So in the last slide view over here, to show the viewer like what you have created, what was the final output of your project. What I like to do is to create a 360 view. Right now, this doesn't have that yet. So let me delete these other slides over here so I can show you how that works. So you can add new slides to these and to this milestone, the last one, by rotating the view, and then you can click to add a new slide. And for these 360 view of slides, I usually put the slide duration to 0 because I just want the camera to move. So I want this slide transition to be applied where like there will be a rotation of the camera, but I don't want the camera to stop at this view and then go to the next one and then stop and then go to the next one, right? So you just need to go and create a couple of camera angles during that 360 view and put the slide durations to 0. So in the end, you're gonna get like a 3D view of like this area. Okay. So it's a small detail, but kind of like um, improve that sense of visualization of the final output of your project, right? So if I play from this slide, we will see that camera angle being applied over there and then rotates and so on, right? So it's pretty cool. You can do like a slower rotation as well. So using a high resolution screen before the recording is for the recording is also a very interesting aspect of it, because right now if I want to export this as a video, I can export this as a presentation video, but my screen, the screen that I'm using right now, doesn't have, it's not 4K or anything like that. It's just like a 1080 screen. So I can only export to that level, to that resolution. But if you have a 4K screen or 2K screen, you can use the screen resolution to get like a better view and like better quality of that video in the end, right? So adjusting all of these things with the interlacing and the environmental lighting and will along with that 4K export will make like a better quality of a video. Okay. Playing the presentation before recording. So in cmBuilder, everything is happening live, right? So right now, like even if I'm doing my presentation or if I working with any other aspects, like you see that the animation of the cars are still going over here and like parts are still like visible and so on. So everything that you're doing in it's being like applied at the moment, right? Like, so it's applied live. So that means that you're always changing, and like what is the simulation how is the simulation supposed to be stored. So this can whenever you play the presentation, it can, because of all of these changes, it can like alter like what is stored on your computer. So the first time that you play the presentation is the software computing like and calculating all of those camera angles and like the different milestones that it's supposed to go, and like what are the animations that are going on over there, and so on and so forth. So if you're about to export the video, what I suggest is play the presentation once, so it will load all of this information on your cache, like on your memory. And then once it loads and kind of like declogs a little bit of these aspects, you can go and record the simulation. Okay, so this will make the simulation that is exported as a video to be smoother and basically looks better. Cool. And the last thing is to record in full screen mode, right? Because if I start recording my screen right now without going into full screen mode, uh, the size of the video will be limited by these lines over here. So there's a blue line, right? Whatever is below this blue line and above this one over here is what's going to be recorded. So as you can see, it's not the size of my screen. So the video will be like wider. So, but if you go into full screen mode, like hitting F11 on your browser, it will remove like all the browser stuff and the toolbar from Windows over there in the bottom, and then you get like a better ratio of the screen. Still, it has to have like this little bar over here on the top that will make your video a little bit shorter, but it is an improvement compared to having the view like this. Okay, cool.
Pedro,
So this is
quick question.
once. Yep.
Yeah, there's a question in about how to control the speed. Can you just show where the button is to control the speed of the growth profile? I know
Yes.
it's going by
So
the slide duration, right?
exactly. So the speed of the growth profile is defined by the slide duration. So if I go in presentation slide over here and like click on all of these, this duration is what defines the growth profile for that object. Cool.
And the second question, I don't think you can do this, but Gabe asked about how, oh sorry, Britton asks, you can't adjust the rate at which the element grows, right? It's just that's done by us, like to make the growth profile. He said it just seems to be quick at first and then slow down. It's not adjustable at the moment.
I think we changed this to be like a linear growth, but you can't adjust that yet. Like it's something that it's defined by the app. Okay,
Thank you.
cool. So this is our checklist to make sure that you bring your simulation to a very good standard of output, right? So explore all of these items that I showed here today, like up to this point, because this will really help like you wow your customers, wow the viewers inside your organization, and so on and so forth. Okay, awesome. Going to the next step over here, we have our presentation timeline. This is a preview of a feature that's to come, right? You guys can start using right now. If you want to, I'll show you how to turn it on. But the idea is that instead of controlling your presentation through slides like this over here on the left-hand side of your screen, we are planning on proposing like on having the option of controlling the animation, oh sorry, the presentation in a timeline viewer. So it's almost like a video editing kind of like tool. It's not a video editing tool. It's just a way to visualize this in a timeline so you can better define durations and the transitions that are happening during your site and so on, right? So you build your presentation directly in this timeline view and also adjust these durations seamlessly. And this is our first step towards having more stuff at this bottom part of the screen, right? So before, for a couple of like older users over here, we had our commands over here at the bottom, and now they moved to this left hand side, especially because we wanted to use the bottom part of your screen to have like more stuff going on over here. And one of these is the new presentation timeline. So to explore that and give it a try on your end, you need to go over here on your user profiles, go to user settings, scroll down, and then turn on edit presentation as a timeline. A bunch of you won't see this one. This is like internal uh, for us, but most of you will see only the edit presentation as a timeline option. So when you turn this on and hit confirm, we'll see that here there's a little command over here on the top, so you can move from site plan to presentation, and we apply this. Now your presentation view will be over here at the bottom. So I won't explore too much on this today. It's just to show you a little preview of what's about to come. But there's several commands that you guys can give it a try over here, especially the ability for you to click on the slide and then change its duration and see how that's going to impact the overall timeline over here on the top. So give it a try. See, these transitions here are the camera transitions, so you can increase how long the camera takes to go from the previous point to the point at this slide, and so on and so forth. Okay, you can also play the
Hey, Pedro,
presentation in other. Yep.
one thing I like about this that you play is you can start to actually slide things in it instead of being like hide show, flip book. You can start to actually,
Yep.
especially when you get into the building. If you want to go over to the building,
Mm-hmm.
click over, move over.
Okay.
You have to make it smaller. So it's just kind of it's more animation feeling, right? It's kind of like I kind of showed it in the
Mm-hmm.
Key Feature Friday once, but that's one thing I like about it. It's still in development, so any feedback you have for us would be greatly appreciated, so we can improve the platform. But this is kind of step one to building a proper animation interface.
Cool. 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 There you go. So yeah, so this is how you activate it through the user settings, and give it a try and let us know how it works. Okay. So now it's time for our uh, guest speaker over here. So give it up for Ben Stalker. Ben Stalker, you there? Yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
just unmuted myself. You should be able to hear me.
Yes. There you go. Okay,
Whoa,
cool.
whoa,
Thanks.
that was weird.
Thanks. Oh, so look at that. The shirt. That was a nice touch, man. Thanks a lot for that.
That was planned. Yeah. Doing a little promo for Site Plan
Yeah.
Summit.
You were coming back from the site, went home, grabbed the shirt, and then went to the office to just to present it.
Exactly.
Awesome, awesome. So Ben's gonna show up how to use a free software called GIMP to clean up your drone imagery. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and Ben, go ahead, my friend.
Yeah. All right. So let me share my screen here. This is a super simple little thing, a little quality of life tip, but I showed it to Pedro and he wanted me to share. So here's a site that we are like just starting to put together. Like there's no actual logistics yet, but a lot of times when we're bringing in drone maps and we export them from elsewhere, they show up as an image with white borders on it that don't look good. So like here's the JPEG image right here. So you see a great drone map, but then there's these white borders. So when you bring it into cmBuilder, you get something like this where it doesn't seamlessly transition between the drone map and then the just satellite view around it. So like there are a bunch of tools that you can use to get rid of that. There's like remove.bg. I used to use Photop as a little web-based editor. And I just tried a new one. I should have tried this a long time ago that I really like. So GIMP, GIMP, that's just a free open source Photoshop alternative, essentially. I'm a big fan of finding free alternatives that work well. So I just want to show you how to quickly do it in here. So I brought in this JPEG image that was about 111 megabytes. So I'll also show how to like get it down to a small size that plays nicely with cmBuilder because you guys want to keep it around 50 megabytes, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So after bringing in the image here, I first just need to add in a layer, transparency, add alpha channel so that there's like a transparent layer behind it. And then that is added behind. And then now, I guess I'm already selected on this little magic wand tool. Now it's as simple as just clicking on. Is it thinking? Is it doing something?
I
Oh,
love it
here we go.
when, yeah.
It just took a second. I don't know why. So I just clicked on this white area and then it found that white area and I can just hit delete. So not backspace, but delete. And wow, why is this going like weirdly slow? Oh, great. Not responding. Nothing works on a demo, right?
Right?
There we
There you
go.
go.
I don't know why
Wait,
that was like
wait,
lagging a bit. So
Ben, be honest. Are you doing another Gaussian splat in the background and have blown up your entire internet speed?
I am not
Come
right
clean,
now.
because
not,
that's happened
not at
before.
this exact
For anyone.
moment. That has happened. Yeah, so I can select these white areas, delete them. If I want to, like, there's these little crap small spots over here. If I don't want those, I can just get rid of this little border if I don't really care about that. But anyways, after going through and deleting all the points that we don't want, we just need to export that as a PNG so it keeps all of its transparencies. I know already though that this one is going to be too large. It's bigger than that 50 megabytes. So we want to go to image, scale image. And I usually will like play with percentages. So I'll change this from pixels over to percents and then change this to like, I don't know, 30% of the size or something. And it will still, it's still a pretty large image there. It's still going to look fine once we bring it into cmBuilder. So at scale here, it has to think a little bit. Maybe I should have skipped the scaling part just for demo purposes.
But like from there, you just need to export the image, right?
Yep. So yeah, from there you export to a PNG, but there's also one important checkbox that you need to check to make sure it keeps the transparencies. So while that is thinking, I'm going to bring cmBuilder back up and just show you what the end result looks like. So here you can see in my drawing overlays, I have the drone map from Drone Deploy and then drone map after GIMP. I already imported in here. So I'm going to hide this one that I brought straight from Drone Deploy now and then turn on the one from GIMP. And now there's a nice seamless transition. You don't have those white areas anymore. It's just much better to look at, and it's using a free open source software. Like, sure, if you're good in Photoshop and you already have a Photoshop license, you could do this, but not everyone has a Photoshop license. So it's a nice free way to do it. Let's see, is this done? Wow, still thinking.
It's funny how like these
almost done.
Editing, image editing softwares, they take a lot of processing in your computer, man. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, they sure can. So after this is done in 1 second here. All right, so we have a much smaller image. Then when we go to export it, we go File, Export As. Then I want to show all these file types. Scroll down until we find PNG. There it is. And then choose where you want to export it. And then the important thing, though, is once this comes up, is to have this checked. This is not checked by default, but the save color values from transparent pixels. And then I usually just leave this compression level at 9 here. And then this particular image came down to 30 megabytes only and still looks great. So like here's just that PNG image. You can still zoom in and see a lot of details and still looks great. And then it plays nicely with cmBuilder because you don't have those white borders and it's a nice file size. So yeah, that's my little tip. Not super exciting, but it's just a little quality of life thing using a free workflow.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ben. It was great, mate. Cool. Give it up for Ben. Cool. So thanks a lot, mate. And I think that I won't have the time to go through all the tips and tricks. So I'm going to save that for the next session. But one thing that I wanted to highlight is that we now have extended support and training hours. So this is going to be super relevant for especially our European customers. And just I wanted to introduce Sebastian Guaraglia, our support agent based in Europe, and we will be able to provide extended hours in like different time zones. Cool. So let's move forward over here with our session recap, right? So we talked about how to enhance your presentation, a little bit of the presentation timeline preview. Ben showed us how to clean up the drawn images. I skipped all of this because we are here at the brink of the hour, and I just wanted to show that, let you guys know that this part of the workshop has been concluded. So you feel free to stay for a little bit more if you want to ask further questions. And yes, please take a quick moment to share your thoughts. Cool. Good. Actually, okay. I'm gonna just go skim through the updates because like we still have 4 minutes. So like let's see if I can show this quickly. So what one of the main things that these are four small updates that like can go a long way. I will try to cover all of them, right? But the main one is that we have now the split model tool can be synced with new updates, right? So give it a try. You can like create your split of your model if you have a new version of that model and update it. And we will maintain those splits, right? The sketch tool now will show you the detection of like errors. Whenever there is an error that you cannot complete your sketch, these items will be highlighted on your view. Okay. The third one is that you can now add pending users to projects, so you can invite a user. You don't need to wait for them to accept that invitation, and you can already add them to a project. So that way you create like a seamless integration with your user base. And the last one is that you can now also export images with a timeline and label, right? So this has to be done with the screen resolution, but I just wanted to show this very quickly right now, and I'll go deeper with these tools in our next workshop. Cool. And yeah, still here in the chat to help anyone that needs any help.
Good job, Pedro. Thanks, everyone. If you've got questions here, you know how to reach out to us. If you need help, just go to the help section, chat, or book a session with us. Till next time.
Till next time. See you all.
Thanks, everyone.